especially in fast food when like tensions can be high, there's a lot of stress and you just never know what somebody could be going through and you never know how your eye contact and a smile or just a genuine connection with somebody complimenting their smile, their outfit, asking them how their day is going, how far those little things can actually go is just crazy. Encourage your team to look for opportunities to make people's day. And sometimes that is by handing out free stuff. It lets me focus on what really matters, right? And it lets me focus on like, is this actually performing the way that the end user would expect it to perform, right? Is it letting them achieve or solve whatever problem they're trying to solve?
You're listening to The Training Effect, where we break down how learning drives business success. I'm your host, Doug Mark, and today's guest brings a unique blend of fast food frontline and high-tech innovation. Cayden Hunsaker is a software engineer, entrepreneur, and former Chick-fil-A team member. He's also a colleague and a friend. He's really seen, firsthand how training systems can shape both operations and customer experiences.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
We're going to talk a lot of things at Chick-fil-A. We're going to talk about training and development and operations and opportunities. And so I guess if we're talking about Chick-fil-A, I think training is about more than just skills when we think about Chick-fil-A doing their training, and it's about values. Chick-fil-A is kind of famous for its culture, and much of that comes down to how people are trained. And if we think about this, I'm trying to remember, I'm not sure I even actually did your proper introduction in the sense that you were a team member at Chick-fil-A, but what was your actual title there?
Yeah. So, well, I mean, I was a team member at one point, right? I got hired at Chick-fil-A when I was 15 years old. So I was still a freshman in high school, and that's when I started. And it kind of grew through the ranks, became a trainer. Back then, they didn't really have an official title of a trainer, but they kind of just let you do a lot of training. And then I became a shift lead at 16. And so they, had me closing the store, counting out all the tills and stuff. Like kind of crazy to trust a 16-year-old with that kind of like leaving the store, making sure everyone's out, locked up, all clean. But yeah, then I took a 2-year break to serve a church mission. And when I came back, I became a director of training and kind of led that for a year and then became the senior director of training and leadership development.
I think the thing that's really interesting and probably eye-opening to some of our audience is what you're hearing here is, Cayden's working at a location in Utah. And at that location, he's had several different training roles. So we're talking about a fast casual franchise, right? That has a trainer and then they have somebody who's kind of director of sort of training and development, right?
It hasn't always been that way. Obviously, when they were smaller and trying to figure everything out, it was mostly just like one of the directors. Maybe they didn't have that actual title or something like that, but just had to be over training. And they just kind of delegated that to whoever was working that day. But as I kind of got into the role, we got big enough to be able to actually have like a trainer position that people could work towards, kind of like a career development in a not career way, like just to have some sort of growth or target to work towards. But yeah, I mean, it let me delegate a lot of it, which was nice because then I wasn't worried too much about every single person. I mean, there's a lot of turnover in fast food, right? So there's a lot of, I think at any given point we had over 15 or 20 people considered in training.
I'm going to learn some really cool things today, but I started to go down this path. So Chick-fil-A training's more than the skills, right? It's about their values. They're famous for their culture. And much of what comes down to how people get trained, how did they sort of instill that mindset with you from day one as 15-year-old, 16-year-old, you're our responsibility? What kind of stuck with you there that they provided?
Well, I would even go before like day one. I would say even in their hiring process. The Chick-fil-A has a thing called the Core 4. Great eye contact, share a smile, speak with enthusiasm. That's the part I was missing. Hopefully I was delivering it with enthusiasm.
You were.
And then it was make a connection, right? Make a personal connection. And so in the interview process, again, I went through at a fast food restaurant, I went through 8 interviews, which is crazy that I had 8 different managers come and interview me. That's definitely not the norm. That was a very, I think it's because I was 15. There's a lot of labor laws and they're like, okay, like, is this guy, do we actually want to take a chance on this guy?
Yeah.
For the headache that I probably caused them. But yeah, like that's something that we looked for when I became an interviewer at Chick-fil-A. That was, if you couldn't naturally, smile at somebody, make a connection, have an enthusiastic conversation and then keep eye contact, you just weren't, like, it's hard to teach that stuff, right? I mean, we can remind people, and it's, and we're getting into a day and age where technology is kind of removing a lot of personal connection and making it harder to have eye contact. I mean, I'm a developer. I sit at home all day And I find that whenever I'm in public and talking to people, I struggle now with making eye contact. And I'm like, what in the world? Like, that's not
Yeah.
who I am. Right. And so it's a hard thing to come by. And so as part of like a foundation for their culture for training is like, you want to have nice people, right? And easy to talk with people on your team. And but yeah, I mean, from that point, like I remember in my training, Julie was my trainer and she sat me down. We like went into the dining room and sat down with an iPad and she pulled out a video that Chick-fil-A had announced like a couple years before. It's been like 16 years now. Like it's been a long time, but it's a video called Every Life Has a Story. It was like, I think it was an ad campaign maybe that Chick-fil-A did, but it was definitely part of training. It was just a video that kind of went through like a third person perspective of a Chick-fil-A restaurant where it would kind of like you'd walk into the store and you'd see somebody taking an order, like the team member themselves taking an order. And then it would show like a little pop-up of, something that's going on in their life, whether it was an accomplishment or an awesome thing or a hard thing that they're going through.
Right.
And so, and then it would go to the dining room and to the guests, right? And so, like a single mother who just had a divorce, or this, old grandpa who is celebrating her 50th anniversary with his late wife, like just all this stuff to just get you really thinking about, like, holy cow, you never know what somebody is going through. And I think that really puts a really good perspective, especially in fast food when like tensions can be high. There's a lot of stress and you just never know what somebody could be going through. And you never know how your eye contact and a smile or just a genuine connection with somebody complimenting their smile, their outfit, asking them how their day is going, how far those little things can actually go is just crazy. And I think what really solidifies it is actually being behind the register as a Chick-fil-A employee and realizing that a question that you asked or a compliment that you had or your smile, like, changed somebody's dark day to like a bright opportunity.
You know what I think is so impactful of what you just told is really, and I think this is critical in all training, which is sort of explaining the why, right? Like we often, when it comes to training and education, they're often telling people sort of what to do and how to do it. And I think many people are forgetting the importance of the why. And to learn the why there, because someone was genuinely and authentically, to say, it was my pleasure, to carry your, like you said, 50-pound bag, that struck a note. And that struck such a note that this was something that, he wanted to incorporate into everything after that. And to be able to tell the story of like, this is why we say my pleasure. I think that why is really what drives home that culture. And I look, not to take away from Chick-fil-A, but like that got a trademarked, phrase. Like that's
No,
a phrase
yeah.
that anyone can use. Cayden still uses it in his daily life right now, right? And I'm sure many other people do, but that's an example of a phrase. And the phrase itself may not have actually had as much impact if we didn't explain the why behind it and what it does. And honestly, it kind of coincides with that training video that you talked about, right? Where understanding like the workers going through their stuff and the clients or the customers are going through their own set of things, as are other people in the store. And gosh, if something so small can light up somebody's day a little bit, how easy is that to deliver? And so I love the fact that you're going into other Chick-fil-A's and you're kind of judging performance a little bit to see if they're mailing in. Is this a real my pleasure, or are they just mailing that one in? That's so
Yeah.
cool.
Well, it's fun because most of the time it is genuine, right? I mean, but like back to that training video, when I go in, it's helpful for me to remember the team members themselves are going through stuff, right? I mean, from a guest perspective, going into a place like that, like my mom is really good at, how do I put this? I guess she can be a Karen of sorts, right? And so she can really, if something doesn't go her way, right, she's really good at telling somebody and having it end up going her way, right? And so, but that's, it helps me from a guest perspective have a lot of patience for people that are serving, and again, I don't know how long they're at Chick-fil-A. Like, I don't know if I'm talking to that store's, director of training or their senior directors or executive director, or if it's an operator, you know what I mean? Like, I could be the person's first day. So like having a lot of grace there is that I've learned a lot from being at Chick-fil-A. Like, I understand there's a lot of people here that don't have really any idea what's going on, but they're trying their best, right? And so,
Were there any like specific habits or rituals that stood out for you?
I mean, definitely my pleasure. I mean, that one, like I said, I still say it, and that is probably like, if I had to sum up this question with that, I think that alone suffices, like, of a good, like, I mean, that It kind of is like ritualistic. Like people who don't even know I work at Chick-fil-A, if I say my pleasure to them, they're like, "Oh, look at you, Mr. Chick-fil-A employee," or whatever, right? Like to think of it. And I'm like, "Yeah, like I did. I did work at Chick-fil-A and I loved it and it was great." And another cool thing, and maybe this isn't like necessarily a habit or a ritual, but well, I guess it's a habit. They really wanted it really big on elevated language. And so using yes sir and yes ma'am as much as possible, and which is kind of weird in Utah. Utah, like you don't say yes ma'am, yes sir to everybody, but that's part of what makes it cool. If you make sure you say it, it is really different. When I lived in South Carolina, I mean, if you didn't say that, you were in trouble. I remember when I moved there, I got sent to the principal's office for not saying my teacher had said something and I said, huh? Like, can you, like, as I would in Utah, like not understanding what she said. And she got so mad because I didn't say ma'am, like, and so, but a lot of that elevated language, they really push for. You may have noticed already that I say guest instead of customer. That's just habit, right? I mean, they don't want to call people customers because that kind of, I don't know if this is why, but in my mind, it's always when you call individuals who come into your store guests, there's instantly like a friendship that can be formed there instead of a barrier of like, I'm here to take your money. You know what I mean? So the
So
guest,
intentional.
yeah, guest is really intentional. Beverage instead of drink is very intentional. And again, these are all little habits that I look for when I go to a Chick-fil-A to like, how well are they really diving into these Chick-fil-A core principles, right? I'm trying to think of some other ones. I know when you get a refill, we call them refreshes. So can I get a refresh on your beverage would be like a common phrase you should hear at a Chick-fil-A. Another big thing that it's hard to do in a fast-paced environment like Chick-fil-A, but making time that to send out an employee or somebody to go and do table touch-ins and just kind of walk, like we had Chick-fil-A has mints. Most Chick-fil-A's have mints. They'll have a pepper grinder. And you can just kind of grab like the bucket of mints or the pepper grinder and just be like, hey, would you want some fresh ground pepper on your meal today? And while I'm here, is there anything I can get you? Is everything good? Like, you know what I mean? Just kind of check in and see how they're doing. And again, try to make a personal connection while at the same time making sure that they're having a good experience at the store. Offering mints was always just an easy thing, right? I mean, like you can go to the tables, you're like, hey, I see you haven't even started, but like, would you like some mints for when you do finish, right? Or, hey, you're finishing up, like, would you like a couple mints and can I take your trays for you and I'll take care of the trash, That kind of stuff is like, those are habits that you really have to be intentional about forming and intentional as a leader to make sure that you're asking team members and kind of correcting them, right? I mean, it's kind of annoying when, like, it was annoying for me when I moved to South Carolina and I was like having to learn how to say yes, ma'am, and yes, sir, and ma'am and sir instead of huh. And like you said, if you explain the why and you can explain like, hey, let me just say two phrases to you and you can just feel this difference of, hey, do you need a refill of your drink? Or, hey, can I refresh your beverage? By the way, it's my pleasure to do that. You know what I mean? So there's just like, just a mindset of like, we're here to do some really cool stuff for the people that come in that are not customers, they're our guests, and we're here to have fun together and have a connection. And sure, we'll eat chicken at the same time, right? So
yeah, there's this connotation that you get right with guest versus client. I'm just sort of thinking it through. I'm having the aha moment right now, right? Like client is somebody who like often like needs your services, but
right.
a guest is someone who's choosing to spend their money at your facility. I feel like.
Yeah.
Well, they like a hotel guest, right? We don't call them hotel clients, right? Hotel customers. They're
Yeah.
always hotel guests. So that's an interesting point.
It's kind of like an invitation to like call this place home as well, right? Like you're not a customer when you go and visit your friend's house, you're a guest at their house, right? And I think that is the feeling of like, hey, you're coming into our place and we want you to feel as welcome as possible. We want you to feel like you're at home. We want you to feel like you can come up and ask us anything. Want to make sure that you know that we'll come and check in on you to make sure, like when someone stays at my house, right, or my parents are visiting, I'm going to make sure I get them towels or make sure that they've got, some body wash and shampoo in the shower if they didn't bring it, make sure the pillow's right. And so it's just kind of trying to transform that into a fast food restaurant perspective. And, again, that's a big reason why I don't think Chick-fil-A, and I can't speak for Chick-fil-A, and there's probably going to be a lot of really cool development with this, but I don't think Chick-fil-A is ever it'd be hard for me to see them add on the kiosks in the store that you order at instead of going up to somebody to take their order, right? You go into other restaurants and there's a kiosk there it's like mobile order, but you're in the restaurant, and obviously you can do mobile orders at Chick-fil-A, but you still have to talk to somebody. And I think that part will always be with Chick-fil-A. And, I can't predict the future. They could change that, but I feel like it's so fundamental that it's hard for me to picture a Chick-fil-A that just says, we're not going to take your order here. Just do it online. we'll call your name when it's done and that's it. We're never going to talk to you again.
Yeah, I agree, right? Like they love to have those connections and make real human to human connections, I feel like.
Right.
And they strive for all of their staff to sort of focus on customer experience. That's a big part of it. I mean, I've told this story. I can't remember if I told it to you or not, but like, yeah, my wife and daughter and I are at a Chick-fil-A, and this is when my daughter was younger, and there is a person going table to table, right? And, just asking us how everything is, can I get you anything? Which for me at a, fast food, fast casual restaurant, that was shocking the first time that ever happened to me. But the cool thing about this was like he was going around checking on all the tables, but my daughter spilled her drink. And before like we could even we're like literally like looking for like napkins to start cleaning this up, right? And some guy just materializes out of what seemed like thin air, and he was there with a mop and a bucket and a new cup for us to go get another drink type of thing. And it was just
Nice. Yeah.
at which in the grace in which they handled the whole situation, right? Like they weren't put out. They were like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that happened to you. Here, let us get you a new fresh drink, about it. We're going to clean this up. And that was a really memorable experience. And I just feel like story after story after story is people who have had these types of experiences at Chick-fil-A. And this is a model that's really high performing and high revenue and good profits. And at the same time, it's a focus on learning and development. And you can do both of those things. In fact, it's probably hard to do one without the other if they don't really focus on those.
So I guess I would call you what Chick-fil-A would call a raving fan, right? I mean, those experiences make you like, when you think of Chick-fil-A, you think of that experience and you're like, I'm going to go tell 10 people about this, right? If you have a bad experience, like you spill your drink and you're trying to bundle napkins together and no one ever checks on you, you go and tell somebody and they're like, well, get to it. But like, you don't have a new drink. You still got this, wet napkin pile on your table and on the ground. Like you're going to be like kind of annoyed about it. Right. And so what I love with that team member or whoever, was serving you, I love that you said that they brought you a cup, not just the mop, but they brought you the cup. Cause that's like, again, another thing, principle habit of Chick-fil-A. It's kind of an extension on the core 4 is to go the extra mile. And Truett Cathy always quoted the Bible verse in, I think it's Matthew 5:41. If anyone forces you to go a mile, go with him twain, right? Go the extra mile if they're making you. So like you said, they could have had this big inconvenience of, I got to pull out this mop, go clean this up. But instead they were like, I see, like, number one, they're in the dining room. So they already saw the need before you could talk about it. They ran and got it. And not only did they take care of your mess, but they also had a cup ready for you to go to get right back to where you were at. Right. And so awesome, 10 out of 10 to that team member or whoever was serving you. That's, that's Chick-fil-A's ads now, right? They've got the red couch, the white background, and it's just like a team member next to a guest saying, hey, this is my experience at Chick-fil-A and it's so awesome. These people are so great, and go Chick-fil-A. You know what I mean? For focusing on.
For the record, Chick-fil-A, I'm available for that red couch spot if you need it. Like I'm your man. Like totally.
Yeah, exactly. Experiences like that for that team member that really dial it in, right? Like that, it's just like this positive feedback loop where you can see the impact that going the extra mile has on a family or an individual, and you just want to keep doing it. But I remember being out in the drive-thru taking orders, and truck pulls up with this lady that's driving it, and she's probably about my age, and I'm starting to talk to her, taking her order, right? And I notice she has a dog in the back seat, and so I'm like, oh my gosh, trying to make a personal connection. Love your dog. I love dogs. Your dog is so cute. And this girl turns to me and starts crying, and I'm like, what in the world did I just do? Like, I'm trying to be personal here. I'm trying to make a connection. I'm trying to lighten up her day. And she says, I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, did I offend you? Like, what's going on? And she's like, no, it's like, you're fine. I'm just on my way right now to go put her down. And I was like, my heart just dropped. And I was like, my gosh, like, this is horrible. This is a horrible day for this, like, for this girl. Right. And so I just said, hey, we're taking care of your meal. Like, and this, I get this is horrible. I cannot imagine what you're feeling right now. I hope that this, this doesn't make up for your dog getting put down, but hopefully this makes it a little easy, like it makes your day a little lighter and easier, right? And she was like she was really nice. She was like, no, you don't need to, like, I'm happy to pay for it. I'm like, well, no, this is like, give me the opportunity to serve you because this is a hard thing that you're going through. And I had no idea until I asked her, right? Or not even sure. I didn't ask her what's going on. I just commented on what was happening around me, and it just kind of got brought up. And so finding like those little moments that just being normal with somebody would come up, and then doing whatever you have in your stewardship or your ability to help them out, or, again, go the extra mile and serve them. Right. And so, this is not to say you should go through the drive through and say you're putting your dogs down to get free food. Right. But like, mostly just like from the business side of it, like encourage your team to look for opportunities to make people's day. And sometimes that is by handing out free stuff, right? Because what it does is it makes a raving fan. It makes somebody who wants to tell more about your business, tell more about the person who helped you, and they're going to come back. They're going to come back 100 times. And if they have a negative experience when they come back, they're going to be a lot more graceful because they had such a good one when they were there. That experience to me was like, holy cow, this is really cool. Chick-fil-A is really cool that I can do this. And maybe it's because it's the position I was in. But from that moment on, I tried to encourage team members like, hey, if you learn like something about somebody, or you have this feeling that you need to help them in some way, whether it's, hey, let's take care of their drink, right? Let's go give them an ice cream cone, or let's make a shake and go into the dining room and just hand it to somebody that looks like they're having a bad day.
Yeah.
Right. Like, just like the cost of the company, obviously that costs you money, but what it does, it's this investment that you cannot ever measure the return that it can do. And so yeah, I mean, other favorites are like just making ice cream cones when kids come in to celebrate their birthday, just go in and make ice cream cones for everybody. I mean, I don't know the exact cost number, but it's, the impact that has on the family and the parents that are there, like way outweighs even if it was $30 for all these ice cream cones that you're making, right?
Right. These aren't crazy things, right? Like this isn't, we comp somebody a meal a day for 365 days. These are small acts of kindness that make an impact on people's lives. Like that woman who was putting her dog down, like she's got this really great sort of impression of Chick-fil-A from a little interaction that she had with you, and someone sort of stopped enough to talk to her as she was going through this and did something really kind. And yeah, I just, that's the kind of thing that Chick-fil-A instills into their managers and their trainers and their staff. I feel like that is the reason why they get it. And that's the reason why they have fanatical followers.
And it's like, it's not like we have trainings that are sitting, like we sit down and we're like, hey, you should make sure you try, like you said, like pay, like comp off someone's meal every single day or whatever. I think really like the biggest thing, their training alone is so good that you don't have to think about what you're doing when you're there. You don't have to think about, oh, where's this button on this POS, right? And where do I go fill up this drink and stuff like that? Or how do I make this ice cream cone? I already, like that part, if I've been trained right, that's all going to come second nature. And what I can really be intentional about is the person in front of me and just see what comes up naturally as I talk to them. And so I guess that's really how, like really good training, right? And really good, like making sure that your team knows what to do and how to do it. Like the mundane stuff, right? Like how to fill up a drink and to not, take your foam cup and scoop it into the ice machine. Just use the ice scoop, right? And make sure you put it back. Like all this little mundane little stuff that you have to kind of coach people through. It is translating to customer service, because if you can help them be good at their job, they're going to enjoy it and they're going to enjoy talking to the customers. I see this long line of cars. I've got so many orders to take. They're not going to be worried about, making sure they take the order as right, because it's going to come second nature to them because they've got the training so dialed, and they can then spend the time to focus on the person in front of them. That's why training is so important when, to kind of circle this back to customer service, like training is so crucial to customer service, because if you don't know what you're doing, you're not alleviating your mind to pay attention to the person in front of you and to be very intentional with them.
Yeah, I've always said this too. Like, I wanted to know exactly what was always expected out of me and sort of how I was being measured, right? Because if there's a time when you don't know what to do when there's no one there and no one watching you, that's like an important, critical part. And there's almost always something you can be doing that would help the business, checking your TikTok feed. I mean, this commitment to training development is really impressive. And we talk a lot on this show about a franchise training ecosystem and sort of how is that made up, right? Like the experience of, okay, we award a franchise to an owner, and this isn't Chick-fil-A's, I'm just saying sort of general in franchising. The franchise, the owner and their GM will, go to the corporate office for a couple of weeks and do some training. They might have a learning management system that either they trained on before they got there or after they return, so they don't forget everything they just taught. Then there's a team that goes out there to train right before they go live. And then there's ongoing continuous support from the form of business coaches sometimes, or in the case of Chick-fil-A, they've actually have team members at the location that are focused on training and development. And I think that that's incredible. And I think it's a reminder to franchise owners that maybe don't have that system in place to sort of be looking for and identifying people that are, they're really consistent with and follow sort of like your system, your brand standards, your core values, and they're kind of living those things, and look for opportunities to elevate these people into a role of training, because you want to put the right person in that job, right? That the sort of trainer job, because they're laying that foundation for every new employee that kind of joins this team. Well, we were just kind of talking a little bit about sort of the infrastructure and really the sort of why behind we do certain things. That was really sort of the impetus for us to go down this path. The interesting thing about what you were just talking about was that was something relatively small/benign, right? Like we're talking about getting ice into a cup.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And the why mattered though, right? Like understanding
Definitely.
the why, it clicked for you to understand, well, of course, right? There's sort of two things that can happen. Definitely styrofoam's coming out of that cup if I'm shoving it in there. And suddenly my hand's dripping through that ice every time I dry it through there. And this is what we were talking about. Like the little things matter, and explaining why we do the little things is kind of everything. And I think we're living in this really cool time, because it used to take a lot of time to build training materials. Like I'm going to throw this out there because you were the training manager and you've had to build materials and things like that. But like the AI tools that we're carrying around now, if we're thinking about the documenting the sort of like how to do something and why it's important to do that, I mean, I can verbatim say it in my phone. I can load it into an AI and I can create a course out of that, like immediately.
Yeah. Not even just a course. You could create a mock video of a customer interaction of why it would be important, right? Like the application of, instead of it just being a text, right? It could translate into, here is a fake environment that we made up. It's all AI generated, but it's why this experience right here is why we have to do X, Y, and Z, right? And there's probably more reasons why not to scoop foam cups into ice, but they're like, hey, you had, shingles virus, or, and now you gave chicken pox, or you passed, like E. coli or Hep A, or, I'm just saying diseases and whatnot, but like, AI could like go to worst case scenario of like, you got this person sick because your hand was in the ice bin, right? Or they have like this chunk of foam and they're like, what the crap, right? Like, I don't know, just little things like that kind of, you can translate like what would normally be on like and on my training plans was a checkbox that was a line that said, emphasize why we use the scoop versus just scooping the cup out of the ice bin. I don't know how I had it worded, but then it's up to the trainer to be like, okay, well, what, like, let me remember and interpret this line as I'm teaching this individual. But if there was a quick video to be like, hey, like, here's 10 seconds as why, right? And it's like this dive into like, foam or diseases or whatever. Yeah. I mean, AI and honestly, automated training systems in general. Like I inherited a paper system when I became the training director, and there's a lot of politics around like inheriting systems and stuff like that and so I had to be kind of careful how I took it and transformed it, because I didn't want to just throw it out, because the people who were kind of running it before me were still there. But trying to transfer it into, number one, like just digital, so that I didn't have to be at the store looking at all these papers of training plans and stuff to figure out when people are working and what they should be learning and training on, but also just to quickly track what you've trained on and your kind of progress through the program. Like I used a mix of Zapier and Trello and all these automated tasks which was easier for me to do because I am just software minded, right? So I can kind of make these like plans and functions and stuff that, like, it's going to be really difficult for somebody who's focusing on a franchise and focusing on growing it and focusing on training to then have to take time to take a software development course and figure out how to put together an electronic training plan using Sheets or using Trello or whatever tools they want to use. Like having a built system, and again, I think that's why Chick-fil-A spent millions on building their own internal one, is because it matters so much, right? Like they wouldn't have done it. They wouldn't have built it if they didn't think it was going to have an impact. Like you said, Chick-fil-A is very profitable. They're in zero debt. That's how they operate. They do not go into debt. And so if they can't build a store because they would go into debt, they don't build it. They're very, very budget conscious of it. And so they have to have all the money beforehand before they start on it. Again, like it's hard to get to that point. It's hard to get to a level of operations. But once you get there and you can surround yourself with people who also care about the same things that you care about, it just it just becomes a wheel, right? I mean, Chick-fil-A has produced a lot of awesome leadership thought and a lot of awesome leadership individuals that I still listen to today that aren't even affiliated with Chick-fil-A anymore. Because they were so passionate about everything they were working on, they just became leaders in the industry for it.
Remarkable brand, and it's kind of interesting because I think there are some parallels to what you do now and maybe some of the work that you did there or some of the experiences you had there. Can you kind of relate anything to you're in the software development world now. Like, you create customer experiences, user experiences, use cases, things like that. How would that kind of be relevant to some of the things you saw at Chick-fil-A and the training systems they had?
Well, I mean, number one, like there's a lot of, as a full stack developer, there's a lot of ownership from the very, deep, low level stuff of like the database and everything like that, all the way to the user experience. And so like Mark, who we work with, does a really good job at helping keep me in track of like, hey, let's make sure we're having consistent experiences across different pages, right? Like because you're building something somebody's going to be using and someone's going to look at, and they might know this, they might know what they're doing better than I even know as the developer. Just making sure that like when I'm on this page, what would I expect to see here, right? And trying to think about, okay, put myself in their shoes. Are they expecting to see what buttons here? Or what are they like? Are they expecting to see something to be disabled, or should there be a reminder or a pop up here? Or if a pop up happens, were they anticipating it, or did it just kind of scare them, right? Like, did it just jump at them and be like, hey, look at me, right? And so there's a lot of parallels to it, mostly just like around user experiences translating to customer, experiences. I think there's a lot more parallels than it being different, which can be helpful, but also it's hard for me to keep it all straight. And so there's definitely a need in software to document processes, and there's there's whole roles in software around automation and pipelines and being like, okay, as soon as like automated deployments are a thing, right? And so it will automatically go through and do any tests that you have built to make sure like, okay, is this still meeting our standards here? Is it still performing as expected here? And, trying to automate all of that as much as possible so that I'm not having to go through and be like, okay, before I do a deployment, let me make sure I'm backing up my database and make sure that I'm backing up the code that we have right now. And then let me go online and make sure no one's using the system, right? And you know what I mean? Like all these different steps of like, it has to be done the same way every time. You don't want to miss everything. Like you got to document it and you got to try to find a way to automate it, because that's what, alleviates a lot of burden for your team. And again, like it lets me focus on what really matters, right? And it lets me focus on like, is this actually performing the way that the end user would expect it to perform, right? Is it letting them achieve or solve whatever problem they're trying to solve? And if it's not, or if I'm having to worry about how to do it, like individual things that don't really matter, it's already a solved problem. It's just taking my mental time away from working on what actually matters.
Well, you mentioned some interesting software tools, and I mean, you talked a little bit about using Trello, right? So Trello, everyone who doesn't know, like a project management tool, and interesting, right? Because I believe they even have like a free version. So as a franchisee, you could use their free version and manage your projects. We have nothing to do with Trello. Everybody, shout out, Cayden's used it. I've used it to a lot of success. But those are the kind of tools that we're talking about. I think that help small business owners. What would you tell like a franchisor who is trying to digitize their training, and today all they have is what you went through? All they have was paper, let's say.
Well, I mean, number one, I would say if you digitalized all the paper, like, because that's what I did, right? I tried to digitalize all my paper. You don't have an organized system or structure or some sort of automation to help you, you're going to feel just as confused or overwhelmed as it was on paper, and maybe even more than on paper, because on paper you can at least like there's a feeling of organization of it in front of you and touching it, right? A little bit than this idea of all, this abstract list that exists somewhere on someone's computer that I have, right? And so like the biggest thing is making sure that you have a defined repeatable process still, and technology just lets that be a lot easier, right? I mean, because you could have a paper system that is super dialed in and super awesome, but you're going to be doing a lot of manual work, printing off the sheets, making sure you organize it in the right spot, making sure you pull it up at the right spot, having reminders to go back through and check everything. And so really that's like the biggest thing is technology. The main problem of going from paper to technology isn't that the process itself is broken. It's to help automate things that you're having to do in mundane tasks, right? And so like on Trello, for example, again, I use the free version. I think I remember paying for something, but I remember it being maybe $10 a month, super cheap. Like our investment on Trello was very, very small. But I made sure that when I created a new team member on this Trello board, or however I had it set up, I don't even remember now, but it would go through and it would build out every position they could learn at Chick-fil-A and all of my current training bullet points that we want to make sure we'd hit there. And it will link to the videos for them as an individual. You know what I mean? Like, and so it was something I didn't have to worry about. And then after, if it had been X, Y, and Z days since a specific position had been worked on, it would change the color. And so at a glance, I could look through the Trello board and be like, oh, this person has not been on this position, or hasn't checked anything off on this position in a long time. They're not either doing it and not making sure that we like are doing it the right way, or they just haven't, they're missing out on opportunities to understand the business better.
I think we forget that sometimes. And it's one of the, I call some of our reports stoplight reports because, as a franchisee, if you want to kind of get a visualization of sort of the overall health of your unit, you can run a report that in Learning Zen, I'm like, okay, let's make sure we color code these things because we want to be able to do a quick glance, right? And this is our at a glance report. And basically red is someone who's failed a course, green is someone who's passed a course, and yellow is somebody that started but not finished, right? So it's
right.
We already assimilate, with stoplights as red is stop and green is go and yellow's kind of in between, right? And there's these things we can do as software developers, but also as training leaders to make things a little bit easier to like absorb and understand.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, anything you can use to, symbols or icons are another great thing to use. I mean, this is more in software development, as a franchisee trying to create this own system. If you can find a way, at Trello, like we said, the free version lets you do colors and stuff. But again, you're doing a lot of the automation yourself and trying to figure out, like just fixing bugs, like I wouldn't have to normally care about if I wasn't using an electronic system. Like I kind of took, because of my passion for technology, I was able to dive into that. But if somebody maybe they're not necessarily like opposed to technology, but they're not like, well, I want to go through and build out this complex system or algorithm to make sure that stuff is happening. Like, you're probably like, that's where a tool like Learning Zen or any other thing in your industry could be awesome, is that it's already done all the hard work for you and you just have to use it to help automate the stuff you're already trying to do and have it be organized. Because again, you throw it into digital, or you throw it all into Google Docs or Google Sheets or Trello. If there's not organization, if there's not structure, it's going to feel, I think it would feel worse than if it was on paper, because you at least have, like I said, you have more control over the paper. I feel like there's just like a mental thing of like technology just sounds like, if it's in the cloud or something like that, it's like, who knows what's going on with this organization, right? But I have it, if you have it in paper in your file structures, like your folder, your different folders and stuff. And we used a mix at Chick-fil-A. Even before I left, like, we had my Trello conglomeration of not just training, but also like checklists throughout the day. So like we had like an opening checklist, a midday checklist, a closing checklist, right? We used all of that. Because again, you don't want to miss stuff, right? Like if you're trying to remember it, you're going to miss something. And it's also just easy to, like, as a manager, it was so nice to look at a list and be like, okay, this is checked off and by who, and just have peace knowing like, well, I could go glance at it if I'm like, last time they did this, they didn't do that good. But like, I could leave the store knowing, okay, everything's done. Like I don't have the anxiety of staying up all night. Like if I close the store, is the opener going to find out that I forgot to put some lemonade in the fridge or something like that, right? And there's a lot of peace that comes to just like checking off every little box. Even if it can get tedious and stuff, it just is worth it to have the peace of mind and kind of just put your stamp on the day and be like, yes, like we did everything we needed to do.
It does bring me down this road of, we talk a lot about, micro training today, in the e-learning world, especially in the franchise world, where, instead of creating like a course for, a frontline employee or frontline, staff, you'd say, okay, what are the different roles that we have, right? These are the roles. Let's create a series of courses they need to take so they get these little wins along the way. 3-hour course, right? They're going to say, here's how I want you to greet the customer, and here's how I want you guys to upsell and cross-sell, and or value, and breaking those things down. We love, and we often suggest, like, these, you put that in a role, right? And you assign somebody that path of that role, whatever it is, right? Like it could be, your front, I don't know what they call them. Like, was it an order taker? Was it front line?
Yeah, we just called it front counter.
Front counter. Yeah.
Is what we called it. So
So there's a lot of pieces to the front counter, right? There's the customer experience, there's working the POS, there's talking to the staff, there's making sure things are clean. Like, it's not just how to use the POS.
Right. Well, and to your point, 30 minutes ago or so, like, what do I do during downtime? Where should my head be looking? Right. And so yeah, I mean, that's definitely how we had it structured out. I think we had 9 positions. I don't know if I could name them off right now, but so like front counter would be one. I don't know why we called it a pusher. That position kind of got created while I was gone, and then I came back and kind of inherited it. But it was somebody who was in between the runner who would run the food out to the individual, right, or like deliver it to their table. Again, an extra mile thing of Chick-fil-A. Unless you're doing carry out, like they're going to take it to you. But in between the person who's delivering the food and the person who's organizing it onto a tray or putting it into the bags, they're the baggers. It was someone who was there to double check the bagger to make sure all the food was there, but then add in the condiments and the sauces and the straws or the forks or the napkins to make sure that wasn't missed, right? Somebody who, that's like what their focus was just to like, let's double check the order accuracy that we didn't miss anything. And then let's add the stuff that they would probably need for this meal. And then the runner on the way out, hopefully they're glancing at it.
Details matter.
Yeah. So, I mean, we had, and then we had in rush, like peak hours at Chick-fil-A, we had an individual just doing drinks for the drive-thru, an individual just making shakes for both front counter and drive-thru. We had a front counter bagger, the person who's, putting the food in. This is just like front of house positions that I'm running through. And, and then we had the drive-thru position at the window. You could be a drive-thru. I think we call them Expediters, where it was the person at the window kind of became a facilitator of delivering food. Like if you go to Chick-fil-A's and there's 2 drive-thrus or 2 lanes and stuff, usually there's a person at the window that's looking at the screens and getting the bags and putting them in order and handing it to somebody to go and take to the cars. And then you had your outside order takers, right? And so each one of these positions has, like you said, all the individual like little things that you need to know. And there's some overlap, right? I mean, if you're making drinks in the drive-thru, there's going to be overlap to making drinks as you're taking orders on the front counter. But there's still like that position itself has different responsibilities, different things they could look for in downtime, and different things that we measure for. Like, so when I said we had a mix of paper and electronic tracking, the one thing that I was trying to get moved to electronic, but I kind of like the idea of keeping it as a physical copy, was our training card, which was like their final pass off of every position. We had like a minimum hour requirement that you had to work in a position to consider it, like to pass off that position's training, which allowed us to be like, hey, you're technically still in training, but you're awesome. Like you killed it at front counter, you kill it at delivering food, like kind of take small wins as you go. But it was just this card that had all the positions and then boxes, and each box, I think, represented 3 hours. And so depending on the complexity of the position, like bagging, we wanted to make sure they had a lot of experience bagging and that they could handle their own in a rush. And like before we would just throw them on there blindly, if that makes sense. What it let us do at the end is as soon as somebody completed all their boxes and then scheduled a pass off with, we had to pass off with a manager, right? So it would either be, I think it was just directors and above, which we had a lot of director level managers, but basically like the person who's kind of responsible for that shift is going to be in a position near you and make sure that you aren't doing anything that like is blatantly wrong, and making sure that you've got the flow down, you're doing all the little things, and they'll give you like, it's kind of a cool little thing where you can get feedback and be like, hey, you're awesome at this. I love that you did this, this, and this. There's something here you can still work on. But it's up to the director to be like, hey, I think that I would still absolutely trust you on this position, and even almost train somebody on this position was kind of like the pass off criteria was like, do I think that do you know everything that in a way that you could teach somebody else? And I would trust in your teaching without having to hover over you. And then as soon as they finished their card, we would take a picture of them and they would hold it and they could take it, or I think we would keep it actually and put it into completed. But like, it was a physical like representation of them being like having accomplished learning everything at the front of office at Chick-fil-A, the front of house at Chick-fil-A Logan. So, that's why I didn't want to digitalize it, is because I really liked having the physical card that I could sign off and that they could take a picture with and sign themselves, and we would send it to the team chat and just celebrate the win, right? And so, but I don't remember what our topic was on, but like just again, like celebrating the wins. I think it was on separating out the tasks, right? So I mean, would have gone further and had separations on customer service, on like the core 4 alone. You could have all these trainings on and videos on going the extra mile and table touch-ins and speed of service and order accuracy, like all of this stuff you could really dive in on.
I love the fact that we can break these things down to, bite-sized chunks these days. I think it just makes it a little bit more accessible for I'm a visual learner. So anytime I have to learn something new, I like to watch what's happening, but I like to hear like why it's happening, like why this is going on. And so for me, I'm like, I mean, it really happened during COVID, I think, when I
Mhm.
realized I was such a visual learner, which is funny because I've been in training and learning development my entire adult career, right? I'm just, I would say within the last 6 years really became focused on visual learning more than anything. And it was because of COVID. Like I had to learn how to fix things in my house that I didn't know how to do. And so now my wife and I will watch a video of like how to fix a dishwasher. And in the past, I just would never have even considered that. Look, this is a topic that I, honestly, like, let me just start with a couple of just one, just short answer ones. Really what kind of makes the sort of backbone or infrastructure of Chick-fil-A tick. And it's such a commitment to training and developing people, but it's got a real human side to everything that they do. And that's a pretty special culture and one that I think a lot of brands should be looking at and emulating as much as they possibly can. Like you said, you had a lot of turnover, but it's less than a lot of other places. I worked at, back when I was really young, that's forever ago, by the way. I worked at a Wendy's. I worked at this place called Super Chick.
Nice. Yeah.
And I just remember there was no commitment. There was no culture. Like it was just a job for everybody there, even the owner and the managers, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it was just so, I don't know, like, it felt inhumane, to be honest with you. Like
Yeah.
it was a really weird robotic thing, and I
Yeah.
just it didn't resonate with me. And I always felt like, wow, when we come across these brands, and you actually the example that you used with the hotel Ritz-Carlton, I have my own story from Ritz-Carlton. I think I told you about it before.
I
It was
think so. Yeah.
a crazy story, but like there are similar experiences like Jersey Mike's. That's another company that's really big on training and development, and I feel like every time I go there, it's a really consistent, good experience. And that's what I think many of us are up. And I think especially right now with the times that we're going through, Cayden, like, so I had this thought the other day, which is the world has become wildly expensive. Right? Like prices of groceries, the prices of taking your family out to dinner has skyrocketed in the last few years to the point where if you were to take a family of four out to Five Guys and you just got everybody a burger, fry, and a soda, do you know how much that would be?
Be bankrupt. $200 maybe. Just kidding. That's a little bit on the high
Yeah,
side. Sorry,
no,
Five
but
Guys.
it's crazy. It's $80 for a
Yeah.
family of four to go out to a fast casual franchise restaurant. And so here's the problem: when things get more expensive, our expectations elevate a little bit, and it's not coming out hot, or it's not correct, or the person wasn't pleasant when they were taking my order, or just sort of any of those experiences that we talked about that Chick-fil-A does so well. It makes the experience turn negative so much faster now because things are more expensive. And so it just feels to me, as a guy who spent his career in training development, that it's never been more important to deliver on great customer experience right now when people are spending their really hard-earned money to the tune of almost $100, take a family of four out to get burgers and fries, deliver, right? You have to deliver right now. And if you're not delivering, you're mailing it in, then you're not going to be surprised when your revenue is down and your profitability is down and others are soaring right now. Rather spend my money at Chick-fil-A or Jersey Mike's right now. It's just, I know I'm going to get a good experience. I know the food quality is going to be there. And I know I'm going to walk away feeling good.
And I'm really you don't stand a chance at that if, like you said, your managers or your bosses or your operators or owners, if they don't care, you don't stand a chance. Like there's no way you can expect your team members to have top level customers. Like it's going to be just by happenstance that individual cares. And so I was blessed. Like I'm not just like this prodigy of Chick-fil-A or whatever that like just loves it and stuff. Like I had people that I worked at from the time I was 15 to when I left when I was 22 that they cared. And it was like, and when I started doing onboardings, you can be very blunt with people and be like, look, this is not going to be your career. I get this is just a college job for you or a high school job. But while you're here, let's make the most of it, right? We don't have to become best of friends, but let's enjoy what we're doing. And I think that like having that concept of it from really the top down, like culture really starts at the top and it trickles down. So, I mean, you've got to be on your A game. Like the executive director at our store, like I think everybody would attribute all of the culture of that store to her. And because she would come in and she would she didn't know how to take orders. Like she knew how to take orders, but she didn't know really how to be fast at, she wouldn't want to be bagging orders or out in the drive-through taking orders in a rush. But what she cared about was everyone that was there. And she cared about the guests that would come in, and you could feel it. Cause she would come in, she'd go around the dining room and just have conversations with people and say, is there anything I can get you? Right. And just really try to, and if the manager or she was the executive director, that's she's the number 2 at the store, right? I mean, if she's coming up and caring about this individual, or going in and walking through the store and saying hi to all the team members and trying to just, again, make what we try to train on as making a little connection and smiling, right? She's doing that to every team member now and saying, hey, how's your dog doing? Or how's school going? Or, hey, you said you were working on this project. So I ran for student government. She was so invested on helping me get into student government, right? She actually helped me come up with my skit idea of doing Jimmy Fallon tight pants, right? All of this stuff, she just really cared about the people that were there, not just the team, but the guests. And that made it really easy for me as the next level down of leader to translate that to the next level, right? And just kind of have it trickle all the way down, because the leaders that you have in the store every single day, they're going to look to the managers or, or people who maybe are in the office, you have stuff you got to do. You got admin stuff you got to do. But if you can take the 15 minutes to come in and just check in on everybody, do your table touch-ins with your team, and really be an example of what culture you want to see, it takes time, but I mean, that's where it starts. And you have no hope of it if you're not doing it yourself, or if, your managers aren't doing it. And so sometimes that meant in our store that the fastest, best people who, killed it, profitability numbers wise, you wanted 100 of them, because they could, you probably could do with 5 of them what you could do with 30 normal people, right? Everyone has those kind of people they know of, but they wouldn't become leaders because they weren't great on the culture, or they were rough around the edges with guests. And so it made it really hard for those individuals to understand why they weren't in leadership, because they're like, I'm so good though. And they know they're good because they're trusted with high pressure, high intense situations, but they're not trusted with feedback conversations. They're not trusted with, and that's the kind of stuff that really matters for leaders, is they need to know what they're doing. They need to know why they're doing it, but they don't need to be the best. They just need to have I don't know if you'd call it charisma, but at least the capacity to look to other people and have just empathy and sympathy with them, just to be a human, right? Measure the human side of them. Those are the best leaders.
This is why we can have an entire show on this. I'm going to ask you it might be a risky one. It's a borderline, open up a Chick-fil-A kimono here almost, it's a really simple one, but all the time, especially if you watch Instagram or TikTok or things like that, people are always ordering secret menu items. Does Chick-fil-A have any secret menu items? Is that a thing?
I guess kind of, but not really. It's not like In-N-Out where, you've got the animal style that's not on the menu, right? Thing like that, at least at the location I was at. If somebody's doing it, then it probably isn't Chick-fil-A sanctioned. But the things that I like to do all the time, and I don't know if this is normalized, but I love their frosted lemonades, right? Of getting lemonade. The strawberry frosted lemonade was not on their menu for a while, and I think now it is. And now they play around with all sorts of different fruit, and I think recently they had a dragon fruit frosted lemonade. But at least at ours, it depends store to store. At our store, we would let guests switch it out for a soda. So you get a root beer float at Chick-fil-A if you wanted. Because all a frosted lemonade is just lemonade blended with our ice cream.
Yeah.
That's all it is. So all we would do is, so a Powerade frosted lemonade that's not lemonade but Powerade, it's actually super good. And a Hi-C Powerade mix, that's really good. But there's not much, anything you see on the menu, you can make happen. So, if you want, you can get the grilled club that has the bacon and all of that, but you can get breaded chicken on it, right? And so it really comes down to how inconvenient is it for the store to do? Because before, in breakfast, we used to not have a lot of different types of chicken burritos, grilled or not grilled, or spicy or not spicy. And so there are these custom orders that people try to make. And I think there was a big fad of getting a salad or a 30-piece nugget and dumping sauce in it and mixing it up or whatever and stuff. The store's not
there. Okay.
They're gonna try and go above and beyond for you, but they're not gonna sacrifice their process at the same time, right? There's a good balance of if we have there was a huge trend that I think happened on TikTok. I don't have TikTok, so I don't know what the trend was, but it's something to do with people asking for a salad box. They didn't want the salad. They wanted some nuggets in the box. And I think they were mixing something up or making them I think they were probably making almost like wings where you have the sauce coated on the chicken. So they just wanted something to mix it up with. For a while, it's like, sure, well, like for one-offs, like we'll give you a salad thing, but then all of a sudden it became everybody asking for it, and we had to just say, hey, we can't just give out these, like they're not that cheap of salad boxes. We can't just give them to everybody because a lot of it's baked into the price, right? And there's all of that, a whole thing like that. But so short answer is there's not a secret menu, but you can kind of get creative with what's there. And my secret was to do like a frosted strawberry lemonade before they added that to the menu, and then also to do different sodas and just kind of like, or Powerades, and just kind of experiment with blending ice cream.
That's what happened to me. So I saw a video of somebody at a Chick-fil-A get a frosted Dr. Pepper, and like Dr. Pepper's like, a dream drink for me, right? And so when you can collide those two things, and I tried it, at several different places, and some of them have attempted it, and other ones are just like, yeah, we can't do that. Yeah.
And there's also an art to it so any Chick-fil-A person who's out there that's trying to do this, if you have a carbonated drink and then you put ice cream in it, number one, you're going to instantly see the carbonation like hit with the cold and start foaming, right? And then when you put it on the blender, you are going like, if you've ever been to you've ever seen just like the splatter of shake on people's shirts, that is what's going to be you. You are going to be covered in that. So the best thing to do is when you first put in the soda, especially if it's carbonated. I mean, if it's not carbonated, you don't need to do this, but the carbonated soda, put the lid on that and just blend that up for a second. And it removes some of the carbonation. So, you kind of lose it, but then you're not getting it blown up like this ice cream on, all this ice cream, this Dr. Pepper blend on you, it makes it a lot more bearable. And sometimes you have to do a little bit less. Like there's a trick to it. And that's why it's not like a lot of Chick-fil-A's don't do it, is because it's not the standard. It's not the normal. And so there's not a documented process on how to do it. And so it can cause a lot more headache than it's worth for them. But those are my tips to anyone who is working at Chick-fil-A and trying to do this: is if it's carbonated, blend it like just the soda itself, and then come back with the ice cream and blend it again. Let it sit for a second, and it's a lot easier to handle. So,
Cayden, this has been an incredible conversation. As you know, we'll probably do some sort of version of this again because it was awesome. I have a million more questions because I'm the most curious person in the world, especially when it comes to training and education. But I just wanted to say thank you for coming on, for sharing your experience, showing us your operational excellence and the advancement of your journey at Chick-fil-A, which was awesome. And we're seeing you continue on that journey now with your career as a software developer. Look, if anybody wants to get in contact with you, are you on LinkedIn? Should they send an email?
But yeah, LinkedIn's probably the best place to find me if you had questions or wanted some advice or whatever. Like, I'm happy if you reach out, and we'll see if we can connect and talk about some stuff. So, but hey, it's been my pleasure to be here and to talk about all this. Like, truly, it's fun, and it's I miss Chick-fil-A in a lot of rights, but I've also I'm glad that I got the experience that I have there, and I'm glad with where I'm going now. So,
well, we are super appreciative of you. If the episode resonated with you or sparked a new idea, please subscribe to The Training Effect, leave a review, share it with a fellow builder. Until next time, I'm Doug Mark. This is The Training Effect. Thanks, Cayden.
You bet.